Mercantilism is a set of politico-economic policies that was especially effective in Europe in the 15th and 18th centuries and was greatly influenced by the Renaissance, Reformation, and geographical discoveries. The most important representatives of mercantilism are Jean Bodin, Thomas Miles, Thomas Munn, Antonia Serra, and Jean-Baptiste Colbert. The main purpose of mercantilism, which aimed at the wealth of the state instead of the individual, was to ensure that gold and precious metals, which were believed to be an indicator of wealth at that time, were collected in the country. This view was later called the love of gold or chrysohedonism by economic historians. For this reason, in states that have adopted mercantilist policies, the mining and processing of precious metals in the country is usually under a state monopoly. For the same reason, mercantilist states adopted the colonization of countries with precious metals as a state policy by invading them. The legitimacy of the policy of making another state suffer for the sake of enrichment of one state, namely colonialism, they are policies hand in hand with mercantilism because of the mercantilist belief that wealth on earth is fixed. In other words, if a country is going to get richer, it will only be able to do so with the impoverishment of another country. Although this view was obviously wrong, it was an accepted view at that time. This is why mercantilism is a national doctrine. Mercantilism uses imperialism, colonialism, and war capitalism to achieve its goal. It is a fact that should not be forgotten that this wealth came from the whip wounds on the backs of African slaves, while Europe was getting richer rapidly during its most effective period. Path to purpose: export. The situation where exports are more than imports causes foreign trade surplus. Precious metals are used in trade during the periods when mercantilism is effective, and since the main purpose is to ensure that the precious metals entering the country are more than the precious metals coming out of the country, one of the fastest methods to achieve the goal is to reduce imports by increasing exports and thus to increase the precious metal stock by causing foreign trade surplus. For this reason, mercantilists support foreign trade, but they only make these supports for the export of manufactured goods. Raw material exports are considered wrong. The production model is generally based on increasing the sales of finished goods by limiting imports to raw material imports. The following two practices are good examples of the obstacles to the export of raw materials. In England, the export of live sheep was prohibited by law in 1565 to 1566. And the penalty for not complying with this law can be severe penalties such as confiscation of the criminal's property, imprisonment up to 1 year and cutting off one of the criminal's hand. In addition, between 1660 to 1685, raw wool export was prohibited and the above-mentioned penalties were applied. In addition, it was aimed to reduce domestic consumption in order to encourage exports. In this way, the country can produce more than it consumes and can sell this excess production abroad. Colonialism and mercantilism. Countries that adopted mercantilist policies systematically adopted colonialism, even fought to seize the colonies of other countries, and used piracy activities as an effective policy to achieve this goal. Colonies served mercantilism in three main areas. First area, increasing the precious metal stock by extracting precious metals, if any, in the colonies and taking them to the exploiting country. The second area is to prevent the potential exit of the existing precious metal stock from the country by removing the raw materials available in the colonies and to prevent a possible raw material import, and as the third area, the production facilities of the colonies are destroyed by turning them into an open market depending on the exploiting country. Seizure of stock. Abundant and cheap labor policy. Mercantilist understanding favors producing products cheaply. So it needs an abundance of workforce. In order to increase the workforce, the policy of increasing the population has been adopted. The overpopulation is desired to provide soldiers for a strong army to be used to obtain new colonies, and to reduce the general level of wages by creating a surplus of labor. In addition, in order to encourage the workforce, mercantilists emphasized industriousness, and features such as laziness and parasitism were rejected. Men who refused to work in England in 1547 could be enslaved if it could be proven by those who realized this. Beggars without any existing physical or mental disabilities were sentenced to beatings, thieves were sentenced to death. In addition, mercantilists argue that, contrary to all other economic ideas, the labor supply will increase when the general wage level decreases. They base this idea on the basis that people will have to work when they are hungry. The role and importance of the state in mercantilism. Mercantilists favored a strong state. A strong state, with its strong treasury, promotes production and exports, and protects traders and producers against internal and external threats. It enables its producers to gain competitive advantage with its low-wage policies, and establishes colonies in order to seize precious metal stocks of other countries by establishing a strong state, a strong army and navy. In other words, they prefer the visible hand of the state instead of the invisible hand of the market, which is preferred by those who come after the mercantilists. The end of mercantilism.
Goodbye.
The theoretical downfall of mercantilism was the introduction of political economy into economic literature, along with Adam Smith's The Collapse of Nations. But before that, the mercantilist theory was criticized by many economists and philosophers about mercantilism. David Hume said, "Mercantilism has to fail, mercantilism cannot prevail." But even though mercantilism ended in theory, the colonial dimension continued. The colonial character of mercantilism began to end in the Second World War, with the colonial states being heavily damaged by the war. Because the European states had suffered a great economic blow from the war, and could no longer control the revolts in their colonies.
Subscribe now.